Okay, good evening. Today's February 19th. It's a little bit after 5:30. I apologize, we were just waiting to get a quorum for our meeting. This is the Auburn Finance Committee meeting. Allow me to read our remote participation script. This open meeting of the Town of Auburn Finance Committee is being conducted both in person and remotely, consistent with Chapter 107 of the Acts of 2022, which suspends the requirement of the open meeting law to have all meetings in a publicly accessible physical location. Further, all members of public bodies are allowed to participate remotely as long as reasonable public access is afforded so that the public can follow along with the deliberation of the meeting. For the public to join the meeting remotely by telephone, it's 1-786-535-3211 and an access code of 991-599-357, or the public can join via computer at global.gotomeeting.com/join/991-599-357. All supporting materials that have been provided to members of this body are available on the town's website. The public is encouraged to follow along using the posted agenda. Please note that this meeting is being recorded by Auburn Cable Television. Can I just ask the caller on the line, who we have for a caller?
Trevor Sansucci.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear that. Is that Trevor?
Sansucci.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you. Permit me to confirm that all members and persons anticipated on the agenda participating remotely are present and can hear me. Members, when I call your name, please respond in the affirmative. Trevor Sansucci. Are we hearing Trevor on your end, Rich?
Here. Can you guys hear me okay?
A little bit better there. Okay. So Trevor, Michael Marshall.
Present.
George Graham.
Present.
Stephen Consilio.
Yeah.
Town officials and employees participating, when I call your name, please respond in the affirmative. Interim Town Manager Dory Vecchio. CFO Town Accountant Karen Harnoy.
Present.
Administrative Assistant Sharon Kwiatkowski.
Here.
Also, please note that each vote taken in this meeting will be conducted by roll call vote because we do have a member participating remotely. So on the agenda tonight, we have some transfer requests, and then we'll have a discussion about the Fire Station Building Committee recommendation and potential vote on the free cash to the fire station project. Some minutes and then an adjournment. We'll get through the transfer requests. We had one that was a small amount one. That one can be considered filed. That's at the back of the packet. It was under $250, $95 one. The first one being from DDIS, the code department. This is a interdepartmental transfer from the local inspector salary account. Amount requested $1,144 going to the town planner salary account. Reason given, assistant director increase in duties. Thank you. Just looking for you.
Good evening.
Can you just give us a brief synopsis of these are both relative to the same changes in the assistant director and increase in duties?
Yes, they are. Thank you for asking. So DDIS, I am proud to announce that we have filled the assistant director's position with 2 people and promoted from within. 2 people that asked to take on some more leadership in the department. So these 2 transfers are indicative of those increased duties and the title of assistant director. So the town planner and the animal control officer, animal inspector.
Any questions?
Motion approved.
Okay, we'll have to, okay, we have a motion to approve. Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, by roll call. Trevor Sansucci? Trevor, we're having a tough time hearing you.
Yes.
Thank you. Michael Marshall?
Yes.
George Graham?
Yes.
Silvio?
Yes.
Yes as well.
Thank you so much.
The next one is from the local inspector salary. Amount requested $4,041 going to the ACO salary. That's the same assistant director / increase of duties. Do I have a motion to?
Motion approved. Second.
Motion and a second. We'll do by roll call. Trevor Sansucci?
Yes.
Michael Marshall?
Yes.
George Graham?
Yes.
Silvio?
Yes.
I'm a yes as well. Okay, this one is Fleet Maintenance Department. This is from the Fleet Wages account. Amount requested $3,000 going to Fleet Supply. Reason given to replenish the Fleet Supply account due to unanticipated budget shortfall. Want to give us a quick update on how we're doing in
Sure thing.
supplies?
Good evening. The fleet maintenance supply budget is basically a line item in the fleet maintenance division that's sort of a catch-all for repairs that can't be assigned to a specific department. So bulk purchases of oil, parts, consumables, and inventory items, sometimes tires and batteries. When we set up that account at the beginning of this year, we didn't have a good basis to know how much we needed for the year, and we've run short at this point. We've started allocating things to other line items, for example, DPW maintenance or police maintenance, if it seems like some of these bulk purchases are primarily for those departments. So we've been working on sort of how we charge to that account, but we're still going to need more money through the end of the year out of that account. So this transfer should probably get us another month or so out of the fleet wages account. Based off of how we're projecting in the fleet wages, I think that there may still be more available, but that account is for when we have sort of a bulk of work in that department, we need help, and we bring other people in from, for example, highway, and we need to pay them a stipend to work in the fleet department. This year we've hired 2 new mechanics who have, I will say, been excellent, and we've noticed less of a need for help in that department. They've been handling a lot of the work and handling it well. So I think we'll have some money left over in that account to do more transfers like this, but I'm trying to take it about a month at a time to kind of see how we're doing each month. So this is sort of the first stab at that right now.
Thank you. Any questions?
Motion approved.
Second.
Motion and a second by roll call. Trevor Sansucci,
Yes.
Michael Marshall,
Yes.
George Graham,
Yes.
Basilio,
Yes.
and I'm a yes as well. Thank you.
Thank you.
From the police department, from the deputy chief, do you want to give us an overview before we go through each of the?
Evening. Which, did you want me to take?
Do you want to give an
first?
overall as to the requests? I think they're all, well, at least the first 3 are promotion related and the last
Oh,
one
okay.
overtime, but actually, if you want to cover, you're more than welcome to cover all of what you have. I saw
Sure.
page 2 as well.
Starting with, as you referenced, the promotional ones. So basically what happened is we were approved for a 3rd lieutenant for the quarter year, and we were inclined to move that up, and we had approval from management to move that forward. So it coincided with a hiring process, so that we were able to hire to full budgeted strength, but 3 of them are in the academy. So as of right now, you know, we're at full strength, full budgeted strength. So those promotional accelerations were basically we moved the lieutenant position from April 1st start to January 10th start. So that resulted in obviously a shortage in the lieutenant salary line, the sergeant salary line, the Lieutenant Quinn salary line. And the last one, as it applies to the overtime, that's going to get us through. Currently, we're averaging anywhere between 6,000 and 9,000 a week at this point, because we have the 3 officers that are in the academy, so they're being paid, but obviously they don't help on the schedule. And then we have an officer who's out on IOD, and we have another officer who's still out with a military deployment. We anticipate him coming back March 9th, but he's been out for 14 months at this point. So, and, you know, I assume the question is going to be asked, is that enough overtime to get us through the rest of the year? And the answer is no. You know, we have the regular spring leave time coming up, and, you know, there's an increase in leave time usage. We obviously hope there are no further injuries that would result in shortages. The student officers don't graduate until June, so those 3 technically won't help on the schedule until October at the earliest, provided everything goes, to plan. And it's a similar situation to what we're in most years at this time. There's, as I explained, there's more officers doing more things at a higher rate of pay. So that's why there's an increased. Actually, the overtime isn't increased necessarily over last year. It's essentially the same, holding steady, but more than what we were budgeted. So
Questions on these 4? The patrol officers account that you're taking from what's the reason we have extra there?
we lost 2 step 8, so 2 top step patrol officers, 1 retired and 1 left for another agency. And when you replace those with step 1s or not, we weren't paying any of them between essentially August and the beginning of January. So you bank that salary surplus, and then from January until June, you're only paying a step 1 or 3 step 1s over 2 step 8s. So there's some savings there.
Did you want to cover the other page, the
Technology support.
yes.
The CFO and I have been drilling down on, the technology costs, or the costs associated with GDS Global Data Service. And we're looking at possibly moving from we're currently in a co-managed model, which involves one of our police officers who has some IT leaning. He does some of the work, and we're only covered during certain business hours and not in certain other hours. So he does a lot of that work. And we think with the amount of the type of system and the complexity of the system now with, both virtual servers and physical servers and everything but the refrigerator is attached to the computers and the internet at this point. We have 39 workstations, and there's a lot going on. And we're exploring the possibility of going from a co-managed to a managed model, and it's about a $1,600 a month difference. We haven't switched to that yet, but these costs just, they go up every year, and hopefully based on what we're projecting, that this should cover us for the rest of the year, barring any sort of, other unanticipated repair. Occasionally something will pop up that we're not expecting, and it gets billed out, per hour, and it's not covered by our co-managed model of support that we have now.
Questions on this one? Michael, I know this is your world. The second page.
I know I bring it up every time, but longer term contracts are the easiest way to lock in lower prices typically. So, beating a dead horse. But.
No, I mean, we're willing to listen to any ideas, and it's, I've been very particular about reviewing things, and the CFO has been very particular about reviewing the invoices, making sure we're getting exactly what we're paying for. But with the depth of understanding that I have, which it's not where it could be perhaps, but we had investigated the possibility of moving to another vendor and trying to save some money. But as of this point, I think GDS is our best option. I had interviewed 2 other larger companies, and they just weren't the right fit. I think we were probably a little bit smaller than what they work with normally. And so we're in a weird spot where the money we're spending isn't probably enough to justify, an additional full-time person within, the IT department in the town, but we're still spending a fair amount of money maintaining our systems.
Well, can I ask what the service ticket was?
With the service ticket?
One of them is unexpected service ticket related to VMware.
It was
just like, so as we've discussed, I do technology contracts like for a living. I'm curious if whether we have service level agreements with our vendors, and whether we're doing any sort of like monitoring or reporting on like how often we have outages, and if we have service tickets, how quickly they're getting dealt with, because often their contracts will contain provisions that allow for either like credits or refunds if they fail to meet certain service levels. And it sounds like if there's a police officer who seems to be devoting a decent amount of his time to managing the system, it might be worth investigating.
Again, with my level of understanding, what I understand about that, there were some outdated system or operating systems for the VM, the virtual machines that we were running. We had just done a server project, and for some reason, the VM side of it wasn't addressed. And when it was quoted, and I didn't catch it, quite frankly, but I didn't know what I was looking for to catch. Like, I had no way of knowing. And then it ran, it caused a problem. And then they identified, they're like, oh, you're running, something from 08 or 09 or something. Great. So I actually had a phone meeting yesterday with GDS because I expressed some displeasure that it wasn't addressed when the original project was quoted. And, we trust, we put a level of trust in them that, they're going to tell us the story, that, tell us the truth up front. And I don't think that we were necessarily misled. I just think it was something that was missed.
Okay, any additional questions? Okay, let's get through this. So from the patrol Quinn account, amount requested $24,600 going to the lieutenant account, reason given promotional acceleration.
Motion to approve?
Second.
Motion and second through the roll call. Trevor Sansucci,
Yes.
Michael Marshall,
Yes.
George Graham,
Yes.
Concilio.
Yes.
And I'm a yes as well. The next one, patrol officers, coming from patrol officers, amount requested $16,000 going to the sergeant's account, reason given promotion related.
Motion to approve?
Second.
Motion and second via roll call. Trevor Sansucci,
Yes.
Michael Marshall,
Yes.
George Graham,
Yes.
Stephen Concilio.
Yes.
I'm a yes as well. From patrol officers, amount requested $6,500 going to Lieutenant Quinn, reason given promotion related.
Motion to approve? Excuse me.
Second.
A motion and a second via roll call. Trevor Sansucci,
Yes.
Michael Marshall,
Yes.
George Graham,
Yes.
Stephen Concilio.
Yes.
And I'm a yes as well. Last one from patrol officers, amount requested $50,000 going to the overtime account. Reason given, anticipated overtime shortfall.
Motion to approve?
Second.
Motion and second via roll call. Trevor Sansucci,
Yes.
Michael Marshall,
Yes.
George Graham,
Yes.
Concilio.
Yes.
And I'm a yes as well. From the building and ground repair account, amount requested $3,000 going to technology support. Reason given, unexpected service ticket related to VMware.
Motion to approve?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Trevor Sansucci,
Yes.
Michael Marshall,
Yes.
George Graham,
Yes.
Stephen Concilio.
Yes.
And I'm a yes as well. And from the office equipment / lease account, amount requested $5,000 going to technology support. Reason given, increases in monthly invoices.
Motion to approve?
Second.
Motion and a second. Trevor Sansucci,
Yes.
Michael Marshall,
Yes.
George Graham,
Yes.
Stephen Concilio,
Yes.
and I'm a yes. Thank you.
You guys appreciate it.
From town manager professional service account, this is from the human resources section. Amount requested $3,000 going to town manager advertising. Reason given, unforeseen increase in advertising expenditures.
Motion to approve?
Second.
A motion and a second. Via roll call, Trevor Sansucci,
Yes.
Michael Marshall,
Yes.
George Graham,
Yes.
Concilio,
Yes.
and I'm a yes as well. From the fire department. From the supply miscellaneous account / supplies, amount requested $375. Going to the membership / publications, reason given to pay tri-epic dues for CERT team.
Motion to approve?
Second.
Motion will second. Trevor Sansucci,
Yes.
Michael Marshall,
Yes.
George Graham,
Yes.
Stephen Concilio,
Yes.
and I'm a yes. From equipment account, amount requested $375 going to the membership / publications. Reason given to pay for tri-epic dues for CERT team.
Motion to approve?
Second.
Motion and a second. Trevor Sansucci,
Yes.
Michael Marson,
Yes.
George Graham,
Yes.
Zilio,
Yes.
and I'm a yes as well. And this is also from the fire department. This is from the education stipend account, amount requested $500, going to the equipment repair account. Reason for the transfer is to cover shortfall in account.
Motion to approve?
Second.
Motion and a second. Trevor Sansucci,
Yes.
Michael Marson,
Yes.
George Graham,
Yes.
Stephen Consilio,
Yes.
and I'm a yes. And the last one for us tonight, also from education stipend, amount requested $1,000, going to the license certification account. Reason given to cover shortfall in account.
Motion to approve?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Trevor Sansucci,
Yes.
Michael Marson,
Yes.
George Graham,
Yes.
Stephen Consilio,
Yes.
and I'm a yes as well.
Mr. Chairman,
Sir.
thank you for that. I just wanted to provide the Finance Committee with an overtime update for the department. So I'm happy to say that at this moment, we have no members that are IOD or out on personal injury. So we do have a full complement. 3 of the 4 new hires will start counting towards shift staffing on March 1st. One of them, brand new, like green EMT that's going to need a little more time. But 3 out of those 4 new hires will start counting towards the shift minimum on 3/1. A few weeks ago, we did have a member announce his intent to retire. So he'll be retiring in mid-April. So there will be a shortfall on one of those groups. That coupled with the fact that 3 members will be starting the fire academy on May 12th. One of them happens to be on that same group that somebody's retiring from. So that'll put that group at minimum at every shift. So if there's any vacation time, sick time, anything that happens, it will incur overtime on that particular group. Those members will graduate on July 18th, but those members have been kicking around a little bit. They've been finishing paramedic school. So they're already counting towards shift minimum. So when they go to the academy and graduate on July 18th, all of those members will be counting towards shift right out of the academy. The deputy looked at the paid time off, and I just want to give you a little update, in terms of what the expectation is that we're going to need between now and June 30th. So the known PTO that we have at this point is about $35,000 of known requested time off. We do anticipate over the next month or 2, more people are going to be putting in for their spring usage. We've calculated about $3,000 estimated for the fireworks that's going to occur this fiscal year versus next. So that's roughly $40,000 known, but that doesn't include any holidays. We have several holidays coming up. It doesn't include callback. It doesn't include if there are any injuries, whether IOD. So there's a lot of unknowns in there. But the good news is that we have seen week to week, we have seen our overtime trending down. Probably at the height, we were averaging about $20,000 to $22,000 a week. We've been hovering around the 10 to 12,000, so we probably had a 50% reduction. The flu has been going through our place over the last couple of weeks. So this week, I think we saw a $14,000 a week. But it's really hard to put your finger on in terms of the needs. Did have a conversation with the CFO yesterday. I'll be working with her over the next week or 2 to identify some areas either within existing budgets from vacant positions, just kind of looking townwide. Same thing with the police department because we know they're going to have a need. So we're going to look to see where else there's available funds that could be transferred in versus going to the reserve. We want to try to avoid that at all costs, but I'm not saying that it's not a possibility. But so we do have some good news. Like I said, there is a light at the end of the tunnel, but we do anticipate. And again, because I can't put a full value on it, I'm going to take the same approach that I did last year. I'm going to do the slow and steady approach, and I may have to come back a few times, infusing, $40,000 or $50,000 at a time. But I don't want to ballpark a number that either we're not necessarily going to need by June 30th, but it's also harder to find that level of money. So I think kind of handling this and looking at it every 3 to 5 weeks, the committee will be meeting during budget hearings, so it's not a matter of getting, before you folks in order to get, transfers approved. But I'm going to try to kind of take the slow and steady approach like I did last fall, just because it is really hard to kind of put a target on that number. But we are moving in the right direction, which is what we're thankful for. So I just wanted to provide you with that update.
No, Chief, thank you for that. Certainly, I think we all appreciate sort of the advance notice and warning of as to what's coming up. Some good stuff to celebrate there. You've got members returning from injured on duty stuff. You've got guys and members that were injured apparently or illness at home that are back to work. You've got young firefighters, paramedics heading off to training to start their careers, and you can celebrate, a member who's about to retire. So I think those are all good reasons and all good reports. But thank you for looking into scheduled time off and anticipating things and giving us sort of a view of what the future would be. I think we do appreciate that as a group. You're welcome. Chief, did you want to give an introduction as to what tonight's presentation is going to be before you begin?
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So tonight, I have with me Greg Bolin, who is the vice chair of the Fire Station Building Committee. Mark Imsey, who is our chairman, he's feeling a little under the weather, so he sends his regrets. He was not able to make it this evening. But Greg's going to do a quick overview on what the committee has been doing. I'm really, really happy with this committee. We got a really great group of citizens that's working on this project. As the Finance Committee knows, your chairman, Mr. Kennedy, is a member. It's been a really good group to work with. We also have with us tonight Joe Sullivan, who is our owner's project manager from Left Field. He, again, has been outstanding to work with, along with our architectural firm, Tecton. So the committee's doing a lot of good work. I'm going to let Greg report on that, and then the interim town manager and CFO will get into the budget details in terms of what the request is tonight. So thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Yeah, so the Fire Station Building Committee, we've been meeting pretty regularly since about the end of August, beginning of September. And through that process, we've kind of been working with our partners, the fire department and Left Field, and Tecton's our architects, and really put together a conceptual design for a new fire headquarters building that sort of aligns with the current and future anticipated needs of the department as a headquarters building. And we've had, some public input and some working sessions as well. And so what we've essentially gotten to at this point is we do have a sort of a conceptual idea of what the building should be. And then we've got a working budget for that as well for the whole project that thanks to Joe for helping put together there. So last select board meeting on the 10th, we presented overview of what we were doing, some design concepts, some things like that. And then a recommended financial plan for consideration by the Board of Selectmen and by the Finance Committee here. So we'll go into that. And then the Select Board had some discussion about that and agreed to, send it to this committee to, ultimately the ask is we want a recommendation on a plan going forward so we can use that to put into, all the publications and material we're going to share with residents of like, what's the project? How much is it going to cost? What's the impact going to be? We want to socialize that as early as often as we can so that everybody can make an informed decision when it comes time in May to vote on it. So, the budget numbers that were prepared, both Tecton, our architect, and Left Field did their own cut at it. They worked together to sort of, merge the two together to come up with a project budget. Joe has been whittling away at it, saying, take this out, take that out, even since our last meeting. So the budget numbers in the packet here are as of the 10th. I think, there's an opportunity that we're still shaving some square footage and things like that out. So it's the intention is it's only going down from this point on. So these estimates were compiled at conceptual design. So they're conservative, and the only metric we can use is basically square footage cost on comparable, fire public safety buildings. The town has not funded any further design work to do, schematics or anything like that. So those are really the stages where you're able to sort of really know, like, this is the piece of equipment that we need. This is, the type of material. This is, so we'll get further accuracy on those, if the project goes forward.
Can I just ask for one clarification?
Sure.
When you say conservative estimate, do you mean conservative in the sense that you're thinking it's lower than what it might ultimately be, or you're being conservative in the sense that you're like almost overvaluing things? Just because I'm genuinely curious. Like I think that's going to be one of the big
Yeah,
questions.
I'll let Joe.
Yeah.
Joe, before you,
So that's actually, Joe Sullivan, that's a
can you
great
just explain-
question.
Just before you get into the numbers, can you just explain what left field is and what your role is
Sure.
as on a project?
Yep.
You explained, that was a whole new concept to me as
Sure.
part of the committee, so can you just explain your role to the town?
Absolutely. So the state of Massachusetts, any project over $1.5 million requires a owner's project manager. That owner's project manager basically looks on behalf of the town, manages the architect, general contractor, and any of the file subcontractors for this project for the oversight, construction, and completion of the project. Our job is not only to identify, obviously, your program needs with the architect, but we also identify the costs associated with not only the construction, but any soft costs associated with the actual construction of the building. That's a quick overview, but we're very detailed when it comes to negotiating change orders as they come through. And, you know, everybody hates that word, but it's a mixed evil that come up. We try to make sure that we do design reviews through this process. There are 5 steps that we go through on any project. The conceptual design is just identifying the program and the actual conceptual drawing that's going to be positioned on that particular site. At that point, it moves to schematic design, design development, and then we go to construction documents, bidding, and then construction. So through that whole process, wear your right arm and make sure that we're looking at your best interests through this process.
Now to Michael's question.
So
How do you-
getting
how
back
do
to
you-
the conservative, as we were alluding to, the more detail you have on the drawings, the more intricate the estimate would be. So the conservative portion of it is more of a square footage cost associated with this building at this time. Being conservative means that we are being more careful at presenting a cost covering the overall cost of these projects. We will be, and we are currently still working on reduction of square footage, which will reduce the overall construction costs of the construction of the building. The soft costs are fixed numbers that I've had on other projects, similar size projects that we've identified and are going to be required for this project. So we know what the costs associated with the architect are, the OPM, and any of the soft costs. We're trying to manage the construction costs. Those conservative costs are obviously based on the level of details. Okay?
Yeah, mostly I just wanted to make sure we get that on the record because I worry that people who see conservative estimate are going to think, oh, we're going to go way over budget. 'Cause
No, it's the other
typically
direction.
Yeah, and that's the answer I expected and hoped for, but thank you for providing it. Click on the record so that anyone who's listening knows what's going on.
Yeah, I mean, the whole plan is to end on a number that is, you know, we're not going to go over that number because that's what we have to sell to the residents. So,
Absolutely.
so then, you know, that budget is broken down on the next slide between different costs to just summarize the top level line items. Joe has the details if we want to go into it, but it's basically a $30 million project budget. So, you know, about 25 million of that is construction and the other 5 is, you know, administrative costs, paying the OPM, paying the architect. There is a contingency budget of 1.2 million, which is, you know, a standard percentage there. That's, you know, you hope you don't need it, but, you know, we have to budget for it, right? So, and then with the reductions in the work that is going on, we're pretty comfortable with just flattening that off to a $30 million number, you know, as the total project cost. So the first cut of it, I think we were a little bit over that, but we're planning on making that disappear through the process. So, so the committee has basically recommended a funding plan, which we recommended to the select board at the last meeting, to use at least $5 million from some portion of free cash or stabilization fund to cover basically the majority of those soft costs. And by doing that, you know, that reduces the amount that we have to borrow, which then reduces the impact, you know, the tax impact to residents and businesses in town. So At that meeting, the select board did have a discussion about what if we use more than $5 million, and a number of $8 million was sort of bandied about as, based on, and they can get into the details of, what's in free cash right now, how fast does it get replenished, where's the right place to do that. So, in the packet, and I think what they'll be able to go over as well is what that impact would be at different levels, right? So, and I think they'll have an update on, what it would be if we used no free cash and just borrowed the whole 30 million as well. And that is, not a recommendation that we would make, but you'll be able to see sort of the impact at different levels of, between $5 and $8 million here. And I do believe there's a part of the packet as well that goes all the way down to putting $10 million of cash into it, borrowing 20. So, and then just some notes on that, the, use of free cash is not going to affect the town's bond rating. We've confirmed that with the bank. Initial borrowing is only short term as construction gets ramped up. So really the full impact here is only going to come once the building is essentially ready to move into, which would be the very tail end of 2027 if everything was approved in May. That would be the schedule there. So that, it'd be fiscal year 2027, 2028 when that full impact would happen. So, next steps here, the ask, I guess, is for the finance committee to make a recommendation on a financial plan, so that this can go back to the select board to then start compiling warrant articles for May town meeting, as well as the ballot initiative for debt exclusion to cover the borrowing. And then, 10 months from approval, that's design out for bid, and then 18 months of construction, I think, is what the current schedule looks like, with a move in the very tail end of 2027. So, and I guess I'll cede to the CFO and the town manager for any financial discussion there.
Any questions on the presentation before Greg leaves the?
Thank you very much.
Who'd like to go first?
Great, I will. So as stated, the project is $30 million project. The Fire Station Building Committee is recommending $5 million from free cash or stabilization. The balance of our free cash, one of the important things you need to know to make this decision, is $18.3 million right now. The balance in stabilization is $5 million. As already stated, but very important to know, we did contact Unibank to find out if the use of this money would affect our bond rating, and it will not. On Monday, February 10th, when we presented this to the Board of Selectmen, they did state that they would consider an additional appropriation or approving additional appropriation above the $5 million if the Finance Committee decided that that was the right thing to do. In voting just the $5 million in free cash, you'll be saving the taxpayers $1.8 million in interest. There's a question about how the free cash is replenished. It's replenished over time, and it's derived from revenues exceeding the budget. So it's, when we are spending conservatively. And also, the example to give is the free cash that was used for the purchase of the land on Prospect Street. So that was $4.6 million that we purchased the land from free cash. Since 7/1/24, we've recaptured approximately $2.47 million of that. So that gives you an idea. That was just from 7/1/24. We are very conservative in our budgeting and our spending. And it is very important to know that it was already said, but I think it's extremely important to know that through the project, it is just short-term borrowing. So this wouldn't actually take effect for a few years after we start the project construction. And Karen will start on the impact on the taxes.
Yes, thank you. So with the handouts, we're going to go through the annual tax impact for residential, commercial, and industrial property classes. So the first handout was the residential. with the average home value at $420,277, and these are current values for FY25, and also the median home value being at $394,800. So the borrowing is shown here at different levels, going from 20 million to 25 million, and we're showing the annual impact. So for example, if we were to borrow 20 million on the average home value, it would be $173.09, and on a median, it would be $162.60. And as we go through each million going down to the 25 million, it's approximately about $8 on the annual that would impact for each additional million on there. So I don't know if there's any questions on this for the residential.
Can you just quickly remind me difference between average and median?
Okay. The average, it would be, just as it said, it would be the mean or the average.
Totaling, taking all the property values,
Take all the
dividing them by that
properties and dividing it by the number of properties, whereas the median would be the average of the two middle values. So that's why we,
This is my college statistics class, so I was just trying to remember exactly how we came to that. Thank you.
Means the people at the very top skew us up. So most people are closer to 394, but if you average it all out, we're at 420.
Thank you.
Anytime.
Thank you.
Sure.
I have a question.
Sure.
So you said that it's going up about $8 per million until we hit at 25 million, and then at 26 million, it seems to jump about $50, if I'm reading this correctly. And I'm wondering why it wouldn't just keep stepping the same way. Do the interest rates change at a certain volume?
Well, the reason why I didn't go any further than the 25 is because the 26 through 30 are actually based on some older values and different values. So it wasn't really consistent with the 25 through the 20. So we wanted to just use the most recent values, because back then they were using the fiscal year 24 averages, which were actually a little bit higher on residential. So it would result in a higher increase there. So I just kind of wanted to compare what we were talking about now with potentially using 5 million with stabilization and or free cash, and then 25 million in borrowing. And then if we used more than the 5 million.
So the 26 to 30 would just
Hopefully
shouldn't really
we're
work.
not going to go there.
Okay.
Through the chair, just one more point of clarification. The CFO is absolutely right in everything she just said. There's one more consideration, is that when Unibank has been running these numbers upon our request, so this is probably like the 5th request that we've made through Unibank. When we first got the 25 through 30 number, the home value was at like 457,000. And that was 24 info. When she ran 20 to 25 under FY25 value, the average came down to whatever it is on that sheet, 420. So to Mr. Consiglio's point, the difference in that jump is the home value is different by 30,000 in 25 to 30. So Unibank adjusted it in that first one. But again, to Mike's point, I think there's already sort of a commitment, if we're looking at 25. So really 25 to 30 is sort of off the table. So the 20 to 25 is the most up to date with home values.
Okay, so the next scenario is the commercial properties annual tax impact. Now this is, you'll see there's quite a bit of a difference between the average value of 1.3 million and the median value of 839,800. So we went through the same scenario here with the borrowing from 20 million to 25 million. And for example, the 20 million, the average value, based on the average value, would be 603.99. The median would be 389.54. So it really depends where the commercial value falls as to what the impact's going to be. And then for each one going down 21 to 25 million, the average in 25 million will be 756.04. For the commercial, and then for the median, 487.61. Any questions on that one? Okay. The next one being the industrial, and again, there's the big swing when we talk about we talk about the average value of the industrial being 2.369 million, or the median value being 759,900. So under a $20 million borrowing, under an average would be over 1,099, whereas the median on that, big difference, 352.48. So again, it depends on the value of the industrial. And the I'll just point out the 25 million, an average would be $1,375.66, and the median would be $441.22.
Are the values, which way are the values fluctuating right now? Like, I mean, I guess it's all going to be guesswork as to when this thing gets signed anyway. But the difference between residential and commercial and industrial, all of those things are fluctuating, separate from the differences between individual properties. But is the assessing values going in a particular value, pro or con, for resident versus businesses?
Well, I do know that as the chief had said too, that the average home value was at 450. It has come down to the 420. We hadn't really gotten the information on the commercial industrial in the past, so I just have these values here. But we did just go through the 5-year reval, so I would say that these would be really close to where they probably should be staying. I can't say that, for sure, but this should be a good representation of where we're at least right now.
And has there been any discussion about adjusting the split between residential and commercial in terms of the tax levy?
Yes, each year, excuse me, each year in November, I think we meet and have our tax classification hearing, and our business community comes out and they speak to the Board of Selectmen, who make the decision on if they're going to shift the tax burden away from the businesses or to or fro. This past year, they pretty much level funded it. They didn't make any changes, but it is something that comes up every single year. I've been part of the discussions on both the board side and the business community and with residents. So it is something that's considered every year.
I've been to a couple of those meetings, and I've been self-employed most of my life. And I'm going to tell you that there's absolutely no reason that the businesses can't pick up more and the residents have more relief. Just as the carte blanche. Businesses are setting prices, they're setting wages. They want to control the tax rate. You got to stop them at some point. You can't have justice without equality. And a business can pick up $1,000, not even going to notice it. Just like we spend $3,000 on, a server problem. You don't have to cater to the Chamber of Commerce. You really don't. But that's an editorial, but it's not right.
As a follow-up to that, I would just ask if the commercial and industrial rates do come down closer to the residential rate, I assume the residents would have to pick up a higher share of this debt, right? Like, assuming in 5 years, like if this is a 20-year borrowing and 5 years in, we shift the tax rate, that's going to result in an additional burden on the taxpayers, right? the residential taxpayers.
Yes, that's correct.
Any questions on the presentation? Can you just review on the, so 18 million currently in free cash, 5 million in stabilization. Can you just mention one more time, I think you went over it, but the impact on the savings relative to not borrowing, can you just sort of highlight that? Just
Yes, so because we have the funds in free cash, we can take that out, and it's $5 million or more, depending on what the board decides, that we don't have to borrow, which means the interest associated with borrowing that money would save our taxpayers $1.8 million just on the $5 million. So $1.8 million in interest will be saved if the board approves us using $5 million out of the 18.3 million of free cash that we have.
I have two questions, I think mostly for Karen. How much of our annual budget is typically funded out of free cash?
None.
And do you have any idea of like historical free cash numbers, like over the last several years? I know we're at 18 now. Were we at 18 2 years ago and we just sort of have stayed at 18, or has that number been, I'm assuming that's the answer, but I like to hear it out loud.
I do have some historical data. The fiscal 23 certification was 21.3 million.
But that was before.
That was before the 4.6 was taken out. And then the fiscal year 24 certification was 19.2. So that's when the town manager mentioned that we had added some of an increase back in, almost 2.5 million from fiscal 24 into that certification as of 7/1 of 24.
Can you just highlight again one more time how the free cash gets replenished?
Sure. So the free cash gets replenished from revenues exceeding budgets, and Auburn has tended to be conservative. So we have had some decent increases from that on the revenue side. And then it also gets replenished when expenses are under budget. So due to, wise spending, conservative spending on that side as well, that goes back into there. And whatever we don't spend of the certified free cash, again, gets recertified. So as part of the policy, the town can spend up to 50% of the increase of the free cash from one year to the next. So if it went up 2.5, then we can spend half of that. And that way we're keeping some of it still in the free cash tally to go forward. So that's kind of how it builds itself up. And I mean, it'll take a little bit of time to replenish that, but hopefully we'll.
I was just saying, do our towns, does the financial policy have any guidelines on like what percentage of our annual budget we should shoot to have in free cash? Is that something that's like addressed anywhere in our guidelines? Just out of curiosity. Is that like just generally municipal finance? Is there like a percentage of your annual budget that you should have in a rainy day fund typically?
Yeah, I would say that in the reserves, when it comes to either the free cash, the stabilization, we have, the health insurance trust reserve that I don't know if we actually have it in writing as to the percentages, but I believe that you'd want between 3 to 5 or maybe even a higher percentage in your reserves.
We're obviously like well exceeding that.
Right.
I have a kind of an odd question, because you mentioned that you spoke to Unibank about that it wouldn't affect our bond rating, but they're not a bond rating agency. And how is it that they could make that claim? I guess, is kind of what I'm wondering. Are they a primary borrower or a primary lender rather?
Well, Unibank is the institution that we work with when we go out for like a Standard and Poor's rating. So they really have the pulse of what the bonding agencies are looking for. Yes, they can't guarantee that. But again, I think that they would see that if the town wanted to use $5 million in free cash, that we would also be saving the taxpayers that 1.8 million in the interest. So
That's right. That's just a mathematical calculation. But I was just surprised by the statement. That was kind of why I was, because I went to the finance committee thing that I went to the other day. I went to the seminar on how the bond ratings get created, and it's pretty confusing. And every bond agency has a completely different playbook of where they come up with their magic number. And that's why I was surprised that they would say that, because they're not a bond rating agency. And even the people, one of the things that I brought up there after the thing is there was an idea at the State House at one point, everybody should be paying the same rate for borrowing money, because all of the money is guaranteed by the state ultimately. There's no risk. So we could all be borrowing at 1%. And it's really just goes back to the business community is writing a lot of the laws that are very profitable for themselves. There is no risk to a municipal loan, zero. They should be, the State House, if it was doing its job, would lock that in at 1%.
So my follow-up question on the bond rating thing. So did they give us a cap? I know I've heard, 5 million to 8 million. Did they give us a number where we are teetering on the, impacting or a rating?
that is a very good question, and we did ask that question, and unfortunately, our advisor wasn't in the office today, so I'll follow up with that with you if we could. But, I mean, I would think that there is, but we don't have that answer. I apologize.
I guess my other question is maybe a little bit more for Joe Sullivan. Can you just talk about, if we were leaning to go above the 5 million number, you've got the contingency amount in there, and sort of uncertain financial times. Watch the news and talk of tariffs and things of that nature. Where should we be looking? So I mean, it seems like we're a little bit kind of a, even our personal finances, everything's sort of a floating number.
I think everyone's had some great questions. I mean, ultimately, the town's done a very great fiscal responsibility, building up your free cash and stabilization without hesitation. I've been involved with a few districts, cities and towns that have done that, and they've utilized what the stabilization of free cash is all made for. It's for the capital improvements of the overall town as you move forward. Successfully, just most recently in the town of Swansea, they utilized some of the free cash to reduce the overall cost to the project. It significantly saved the taxpayers not only the interest that they had to pay on it, but the overall tax debt that a lot of residents felt like they couldn't afford. And they voted, and it was a vote that surprised me. They originally went through a DPW town hall and a senior center project. They voted it down 87%. They voted it down at that point. When they utilized the free cash and reduced the overall tax burden to it and showed the responsibility of to the taxpayer, it was actually approved by 80% moving forward. So my point is that utilizing that only benefits the taxpayer, and it shows fiscal responsibility. Now, the overall impact to the project, when towns invest into projects of this nature, of that category, you get more general contractors that are actually take liberty to bid these projects because they know you're taking ownership of the building and you're sincere about moving forward. A lot of times we'll go out to bid without having, the fiscal money approved ahead of time. And contractors are putting a lot of level of effort to bid these projects and subcontractors with the unlikelihood of it not passing at town vote if it's not successful as it moves forward. So by investing that type of commitment into this project, you should get more contractors bidding this project and more successful bids.
And just in your world, the more contractors bidding usually equals what?
Bid savings. So the competitiveness of the projects, as you get more bids in, they try to sharpen their numbers even more to give you a better number for that project.
Yeah, questions for Joe?
The other thing that I wanted to tell you, and the chief alluded to, and the chair, was that we were still looking at efficiencies with the design, and we're trying to reduce square footage. And as we indicated at the building committee last night, we have reduced the overall square footage of the building already just by looking at some of the efficiencies. The one caveat that I'm tracking very closely is the tariffs that are currently out there and the impacts, whether it's structural steel and any of the metal components in HVAC, electrical, and switch gears and all of that. So although we're cutting those numbers, I'm still being conservative and tracking, the impact to the project. So I'm trying to capture that within the budget of that $30 million. So I'm being very careful at what's your money and how you're spending it. And I appreciate the level of effort that you're putting into funding the project.
In a case where tariffs show up, how does that affect the contract language? Somebody signs a contract, they said they're gonna sell you a beam of steel for $100, and then they're bringing it in from China, and then suddenly their cost has gone up 25%. They're not gonna give you that beam of steel if they're gonna take a 10% loss.
So the good news with the public procurement is that when we bid it, they're forecasting out their actual purchases and the time frame associated with constructing it during that duration. One of the caveats, and it happened during the pandemic, is a perfect example. I mean, if you want to compare apples to oranges to the tariffs to that, the pandemic, prior to pandemic, was X dollars a square foot. By the time the pandemic was full stride and into 2023, it was 43% higher on a lot of costs associated with any construction. And how would you hold a contractor accountable to that? And I can tell you effectively, we did. Ultimately, once a bid is put out there and a contract is signed, they're responsible to be able to bid that project appropriately. Even when we have asphalt prices throughout construction of the last 20 years have gone up substantially, they bid the project understanding what the costs are, and we build in escalations to midpoint of construction when we're doing our estimating. They do the same. So there are protections that they can make as they're bidding the project, and they take that into consideration.
Any additional questions for Chief?
Thank you. Just one comment. Excuse me. Since the beginning when we started this project, we've always wanted to come in with a number that was going to be palatable for the community, something that they could feel comfortable with, something that they could afford. So I would ask, as you make this decision tonight, kind of two things, I guess, to keep in mind. As Joe mentioned, we talk about it a lot. We talk about the prudence in our financial behavior and activity over the last decade plus. And we talk about our reserves and the healthy stabilization. And we always talk about how good of a place we are in financially. Projects like this is when we need to leverage the hard work that a lot of people have put in over the course of time. The money that's in free cash, the money that's in stabilization, that's your money. That's money that you've already paid to the municipality. So I think one of the things that the committee needs to take into consideration is, why would we want to go out and borrow money that you've already paid, just to sort of, have those reserves there. So I think this is a great use for those. But the way that we laid out that sheet that you have in front of you with determining how much we want to go out to borrow is, I think that there is a tipping point. There's a scale, right, in terms of what will make the project successful versus what will make it not successful. And I think, you as the committee, you as residents, right, need to look at that and say, what do you feel is realistic in terms of an annual increase? And we should maybe be looking at leveraging the stat stabilization number based on what we think is going to be reasonable. Even if you just look at that sheet, by going from 5 million to 6 million, it puts the annual cost under 200, right? So does that make the project more successful to the voters? When people see that there's a 1 in front of the number versus a 2, I don't know. I would think so, but I think those are some of the considerations to say when you're making the decision on how much money you want to leverage, you look at that list and you see, and you have to make a determination in terms of what do you think is reasonable, and what do you think is a reasonable ask to the voters. And I think that's what the committee has done. I think that's what everybody sort of up to this point has done, is trying to keep the pencil as sharp as we can so we can bring a responsible project forward. I've said that from day one. I'm not going to bring a project that I don't feel in my heart of hearts is responsible. I think everybody has done a good job on that. Really, the decision now is, what do we want to leverage in terms of our reserves of money that the taxpayers have already put in to the system in order to make it that much more palatable for something that they can afford? Thank you.
So Chief, I guess I don't know how much this committee has been following the building and the locations and the plans. I mean, I've been on since the Public Safety Committee of before, where we tried to talk about a centralized Public Safety Committee, and for a variety of reasons, land availability, cost, that didn't go anywhere. But this project, I can say, having been a member of this fire stations building committee, is they've really done their due diligence. The committee has. This facility, which creates a fire department headquarters on the old Chuck's property, which would be one of 2 fire stations. The Auburn Street Station remains will become the substation, which will serve the folks on this end, on the central part of town, and the fire headquarters would, serve the western part of town and beyond. But the program that's been put together by the architect and now the owner project manager on board, it provides for the next, is it 50 plus years? Thank you. I always add that plus. The 50 plus years for the fire department, for growth. The site provides for future expansion, whether for, down the road if a new police facility is needed or other town entities. So I think the town has learned from the mistakes of the past, with the police station being put on a postage stamp and really not allowing us to expand. There's room for expansion within the building itself. Part of the building committee we said, we could take off some of the square footage off the top, but put a certain type of roofing in there, the right girders. So, if 20 years, 25, 30 years down the road, they need to expand because they have more personnel or more needs, or the state of firefighting changes in that time, that could be added on. Whereas the current fire headquarters, the stories are back to the 50s, that if they just invested a small amount of money in a bigger beam, they could have provided for a second story, which they did not. So I think a lot of the mistakes of the past have been realized. I think investment by the taxpayers in this project is a quality of life investment. We invest in our schools, whether you have kids in the schools or not, because it's a quality of life. Kids go to schools, they become good kids, they get involved in sports, they become good citizens, their families stay in town, they invest in their homes, they come back, they stay in town, they buy homes of their own. We invest in the parks because quality of life for there's little league fields that are the envy of soccer fields. It's a quality of life decision. And it is a difficult decision, especially in these tough financial times, that everybody's watching everything they spend and the degree of uncertainty. And if we can lessen that via, years, if the predecessor of both, Karen and Dory, Ed Kazanovich, and all his 30 plus years of conservative financial planning allows our financial our free cash number to be, as respectful as it is, and utilize that to take some of that burden off the taxpayers, and provide for that quality of life within the community. I think it's the right decision. Will there ever be a perfect time for projects? No. There's never a perfect time in our own lives to buy a new car or put an addition on or any of those things, but you try and find the best sort of sweet spot. And sometimes things, and we've heard time and time again that these projects are not going away. And every year we wait, the costs of construction just continue. Joe, what do we escalate? What's the,
It's roughly 10-12% a year.
So we even wait 12 months, 6 months. These numbers are all out the window, and we're looking at bigger numbers. So I lean on the committee here to discuss, what kind of number, whether we're going to approve any use of free cash, recommend any use of free cash, whether we're going to stick on the lower end, go to the higher end, certainly open up the floor. And Trevor, please don't allow me to forget. I'm sorry, I'm not used to having somebody remote. It's been a while. Just sound off over there and let me know if you want to add your input here. I certainly appreciate your input.
Yeah, Kev, can you hear me okay?
I can.
Yeah, I agree with a lot of what you've said in terms of it being a quality of life decision and something that we need to move on. And it's only going to make these things worse over time if we wait. Dollars are only going to get bigger, et cetera, et cetera. I think everyone's asked a lot of good questions. I understand the reservation and pulling from that, but I agree too. I can't remember if it was Chief Coleman or you that said it, but we save for moments like this. We save the money and we work on those 15, 16 years of being under the 2.5 and all the conservatism that has gone into the last 2 decades of budgeting to have moments like this where we can make substantial impacts in the community. And I think it would be in our best interest to move forward with it, with recommending, at minimum the 5. And I think at the beginning of this, they said that the Board of Selectmen would it be consider going over that. But I think at minimum, we should be at that 5. That's just my 2 cents.
Thank you. Michael, George?
I would agree. I mean, you spend 5 to save almost 2 million. That sounds like a pretty good deal there. So yeah, I would be leaning towards 5 or 6 myself.
Yeah, I agree with the chief. The more you pay with cash, the better it is. If the contractors will sharpen their pencil because they know it's real, all the better, because you're just compounding the savings. It doesn't make any sense to have a pile of money over here and borrowing somebody else's money. I mean, it makes no fiscal sense. I say that about people that have 401ks and they're paying a mortgage. Pay off your mortgage first, then take care of the 401k. It just, interest is killing us. And if, Ben Franklin was right, neither a borrower nor a lender be. That is really how you get a better society. At least fiscally, we should try to practice that. We certainly shouldn't be borrowing from ourselves and paying interest. That makes no sense. And as far as 5 or 8, if we have 8, and the oversight at the state or whatever, they're happy with 8, to spend the 8 because we're going to borrow less. Makes, and you spend less interest.
So I'm just to remind us all, the number in free cash is 18.3 million and stabilization's at 5. And stabilization, like what's the official charter of our stabilization fund? Like what is ultimately the difference between stabilization and free cash? I understand that free cash is easier to spend, but I'm just why do we make the distinction?
The stabilization is actually amounts that are voted in by town meeting, and it does take a little bit extra. It takes a 2/3 to vote the money out. So it is more of a, and they call it the rainy day fund, whereas the free cash does take a majority to vote out. Having it in one or the other, I'm not sure if there's really a
mostly
benefit.
I'm asking because mostly I think it makes sense to just like, we have 18 million in free cash. Why wouldn't we just take it out of free cash? It doesn't make any sense to me to try to take a little bit from each.
Agreed.
I'm not making a motion yet, but I think I agree with Steve that if we have 8, like, why wouldn't we spend it? It saves the taxpayers money. It saves, it allows us to sort of leverage our commitment to the project to get contractors on board and everything else. So, unless there's like, I don't know what the next step here is. I don't know if it's that we make a motion to recommend an amount to the select board. Is Sharon, I'm looking at Sharon because I feel like she's always our
I think the,
parliamentarian.
If I may, the Board of Selectmen did approve 5 million out of free cash.
Okay.
They chose that they thought it was the best place for it to come from. Stabilization is typically budgeted. We put that money away every year, and it is frowned upon from our bond rating agencies to touch it. It is a rainy day. I mean, it all is, but there's, typically we don't spend it unless we're in
Savings
dire
account, and then there's the
need.
extra.
Exactly. Whereas free cash is much different. It can get replenished faster. And so it was voted at the board meeting last week to approve it from free cash.
Just to be clear, we're at 18 with free cash? Is that right?
18.3 million.
So if did they approve putting it to the town meeting as a warrant item? Okay. So again, is the ask for us to like make a recommendation on the 5 million? Is the ask to us to make a recommendation of a number of our own choosing? Like,
So the conversation was interesting in that it's a very similar conversation to what you're having. And they said that they would be interested in going above 5 million if the finance committee agreed with them. And if you do agree to go higher, they will bring it back to their meeting this Monday and agree with you.
I'll make a motion to recommend that the select board vote on an appropriation of 8 million out of free cash to the fire station project.
I'll second.
That's like the correct way to phrase that, but
yeah, I think the only caveat I would ask is that pending confirmation from Unibank that it would not adversely, because you were still waiting to hear back.
Good. That's perfect. I agree with that.
Some
Yeah.
sort of-
pending confirmation from Unibank that it won't affect our bond rating.
Does that seem like we've phrased that motion?
Yeah.
Second,
Oh, Trevor, I'm sorry, you have something to add to that one?
He said second.
just a second.
Okay. So we have it on
Yeah,
the,
the motion is I move that the finance committee recommend that the select board approve an appropriation of $8 million out of free cash to the fire station project and take whatever action necessary to get that done.
pending certification.
Yeah, pending certification from or pending a response from Unibank that it won't affect our bond rating.
They're not going to certify.
Is there language on that one? Go ahead.
Yeah. I'm just actually wondering if the finance committee would make a recommendation of using $8 million of free cash toward the fire station project. And then not necessarily to recommend that the select board approve that, maybe that's what the finance committee is recommending. And then it can go back to the select board saying that the finance committee recommended 8 million. Would they concur with that recommendation?
Withdraw my previous motion.
That was your first motion.
I'm sorry, everything I've
Exactly.
said today. I move that the finance committee recommend an appropriation of $8 million from free cash to the fire station project, pending a response from Unibank that will not negatively affect the town's bond rating.
Okay, we have a motion. Trevor, do you want to, from afar, give us
Second,
we have a motion and a second via roll call because we have one member remote tonight. We won't say who. Trevor Sansucci,
yes.
Michael Marshall,
Yes.
George Graham,
Yes.
Stephen Consilvio.
Yes.
And I also vote yes. Unanimous. Okay. Very good. For the agenda, what do we have left? We had some minutes. No minutes. Okay. We did not have any minutes, so we can pass over that one. With nothing further, the gavel slides my way. Do we have a motion to?
Motion to adjourn. Ooh, second.
Jumping. That's not order. So now we have a motion and a second. They changed the order on us. Sharon.
Who made the
Steve made the motion this time.
Sorry,
Right at the very end.
messed you up.
So just ask, did you want to discuss possibly having a meeting next Wednesday if the select board approves moving, recommending the FY26 budget to the finance committee?
Yeah, I mean, we might as well get started if they approve the budget to come to us.
Yeah.
Ready to get started on our budget season?
I won't be around next Wednesday.
Can we schedule it pending to the select board? Is that like a thing we could do? Because wouldn't we have to post it? We would have to post it before Monday, wouldn't we?
Yeah, so we can, I think we can plan on it. Sharon, if you're able to poll everybody, make sure we have a quorum, that's, because obviously we have one member not present. No, we have to post it then.
And then if we can't meet, we'll.
Trevor, do you have availability? Just want to make sure we have enough with Patrick not here to.
Yeah, as long as I can continue to come in remotely, I'm available.
Okay. Yeah, those those are more presentations and the recommendations go pretty smoothly there, so that should not be an issue.
Okay, perfect.
So I think we should be good then. For Steve, you're
Yep, it's fine. Next Wednesday.
okay. So we had a motion to adjourn and a second. All in favor?
Ken?
All right, very good. Thank you, everybody.